So I think now we have 2 more people recording in progress, which maybe is my starting point. Everybody entered the room and I say, good morning. Good morning, hello, hello. My name is Daniela Klaus. I'm the General Secretary of Presseclub Concordia in Vienna, and I welcome all of you to today's talk about SLAPPS, strategic lawsuits in Europe and Austria. Why are we doing this event? It's because recently Concordia founded its new legal service for journalists, for the Austrian participants, Rechtsdienst Journalismus. And the legal service is headed by Walter Strobel. Good morning, Walter, who will tell you more about the new service in a few seconds. The service is funded by the VG Rundfunk and by Literarmechaner. Walter is a lawyer and an expert in media law, and he will moderate and have today's talk with Flutura Kusari. Good morning, Flutura. We invited Flutura.
Good morning.
Good morning. We invited Flutura because she is the expert in Europe on SLAPPS. And we see a growing problem with strategic lawsuits in Austria. I mean, this problem has been known in Europe for quite some time now. The idea is to misuse the law to silence critical voices. We think that this topic is of utmost importance for journalists. And so I'm very happy to have today's talk and Flutura here. Very short introduction, Flutura. Maybe you may add something about yourself later. Flutura Kusari is working for the European Center for Press and Media Freedom, ECPMF. And they are very strong in supporting journalists against SLAPPS and also in other cases. And Flutura is also counseling the European Union in adopting legal countermeasures against this abusive practice. We want to discuss with Flutura the phenomenon of SLAPP, its scope, its dangers, and most importantly, what we can do against it. Last remark from my side, please note this talk is recorded and streamed via YouTube. And that's it from my side, and the screen is yours, Walter.
Thank you, Daniela. Hello and welcome to everybody as well from my side. Well, as Daniela already said, we invented this Rechtsdienst Journalismus, which could be translated as legal service journalism. The point is that since over 150 years, the Presseclub Concordia is fighting for the liberty of press in Austria. And as we detected the lack of legal aid for journalists in Austria, as well as the rising intimidation of free reporting through physical pressure, mental pressure, and legal pressure, we decided to develop this free legal aid service for journalists. I will circle back to that afterwards and give you a short overview about the service we offer. But first we want to focus on today's topic. It lays on the specific form of legal pressure, SLAPPS, as Daniela already said. And basically SLAPPS is about undue legal actions that intimidate free reporting. It is a phenomenon or a trend, if you want so, that is created in the United States, or it was created in the United States decades ago. And in Europe, it became a problem years ago. In Austria, well, we here are used to be first when we're talking about skiing, but when it comes to trends and social developments, as an Austrian, you get used to find yourself on the other end of the ranking. But as it seems, the SLAPP issue recently arrived in Austria as well. During the last year, we had a significant increase of cases. But in actual fact, we had several cases with very great pressure on reporting already previously. For example, there was over 20 years ago the case of Peter Pilz, a politician who was sued by a construction company with a dispute value of 100 million shillings. That equals more or less 7 million euros. And this is an indicator for SLAPP. such a high and undue amount of dispute value. Finally, this case led then to a legal cap of dispute value in Austria. Another older example is Markus Wilhelm. He's an investigative blogger, and he was swimming in a sea of suits during the last years. I think it was about 18 actions from one and the same institution, and this is another indicator for SLAPPS. Finally, Markus Wilhelm won all these cases, but it shows one of the great problems of SLAPPS, the binding or the waste of resources of a journalist. So these older causes and claims in Austria, of course, they were an enormous strain for the sued persons, but they were just single cases. What happened now during the last year is a sudden increase of cases. And that means that meanwhile, we have a structural problem here in Austria, a problem of undue legal actions against free reporting. And this is a very serious problem. The good news is that we have a catchy name for the problem. The name is SLAPP. And this catchy name helps us to attract attention for the problem and to create awareness for the problem. And this is exactly why we are here today. So we want first to focus on the European level of SLAPP issues, and I'm honored to welcome one of the European SLAPP issue experts in the house, Flutura Kusari. Hello, Flutura. So it's your stage. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about the structure and of SLAPPS, and what is SLAPPS all about?
Thank you, Daniela and Walter, for having me. It's a pleasure to talk about this topic. And I'm very happy to see that there is quite some interest. Let me just start briefly with a sort of definition of SLAPPS, although we're waiting for a legislation at EU level to have kind of a better definition. Now, SLAPPS refers to strategic lawsuit, sometimes litigation, against public participation, which are abusive lawsuits or legal actions used with the purpose of shutting down acts of public participation. In a more practical terms, SLAPPS are lawsuits filed against journalists and media outlets by powerful politicians, businessmen, and other figures. Now, these lawsuits either have no merits at all or are exaggerated and usually have no chance or little chance to be won in the court. The sole aim is to use the power to intimidate journalists by dragging them into lengthy and expensive judicial processes. SLAPPS have become a serious threat. They're used usually in two ways. One way is to file lawsuits against journalists and media outlets, and this other way is to use legal letters which are sent to media outlets in the form of right of reply, sometimes even before a media outlet publishes an article, threatening them that if a certain article will be published, they would face a lawsuit. To use some concrete examples, in Poland, Gazeta Wyborcza is facing 65 defamation lawsuits. Most of them are filed by high-profile politicians who are in power or businessmen who are connected to those in power. In Croatia, Index.hr is facing a similar number of lawsuits. In Slovenia, Necenzurirano, a small investigative media outlet, is facing 39 defamation lawsuits from a non-official advisor of the current prime minister. In Serbia, investigative online media Krik is facing 9 lawsuits. In Malta, it is very common for media to be threatened by lawyers in London or lawyers in Malta with legal actions if they don't remove certain content from online. While in Italy, journalists are regularly sued for defamation. And I can continue with other examples as well. Now, in terms of the legislation that is being used, defamation law is mainly used for SLAPPS, but we have registered cases when GDPR and copyright are also being used to intimidate journalists legally. Now, these are some examples to show how this phenomenon is widespread across the EU and candidate countries. And of course, the reason why we're tackling this and discussing this is because of the impact. The impact of SLAPPS is not only on journalists and media, But by creating obstacles to public watchdogs like media, they disable them from holding the power to account and therefore have a very direct negative impact on our democracies. This is why we have all become worried and we're looking for ways to support journalists, and we're calling on international institutions to counter SLAPPS. I'll stop here with regard to the first part of the intervention and happy to continue further.
The European Center for Press and Media Freedom offers practical support, Flutura. So could you tell us something about that?
Yes, in the last 6 years, the ECPMF has regularly provided practical support to journalists. This support is provided within the Media Rapid Response Mechanism. I've shared links of our accounts if any of the participants is interested to follow. MFRR, Media Rapid Response Mechanism, is an EU-funded project which is run by us, by ECPMF, together with several partners such as Article 19, EFJ, IPI, OBCT, etc. When we say practical support, what we mean is money to cover lawyers' fees for journalists working in any European Union member states, including candidate countries such as Albania, Serbia, Montenegro, Macedonia, etc. The procedure we've put in place is fairly easy because we know that journalists are extremely busy. So putting them in a situation where they have to file long application form, we thought it's not convenient to them. That's why we have a very easy procedure in place. All they need to do, journalists, is to get in touch with us via our application online or by sending an email to me. So far, we have supported more than 150 journalists with amounts varying from 1,000 euros to 50,000 euros for lawyers' fees, depending on the case. For example, Gazeta Joborska and Index in Croatia, we supported them with around 15,000 euros because they have more than 60 lawsuits active. In addition, we also provide financial support to journalists who are unable to work temporarily to help them cover, I don't know, rent costs, medical costs, but we're also able to bring journalists to Leipzig for 6 months if they are unable to work through our Journalists in Residence program. Apart from ECPMF, and we're very happy to mention this, is that we're not alone in providing legal support. Legal support is also offered by Free Press Unlimited, Rory Peck Trust, Media Defense, and now a Presseclub Concordia. And the good thing about this is that first we complement each other, and also it serves us to vet the cases. Before we provide support to journalists, of course, there is a vetting process in place, and all these organizations, we're in touch with each other and we share information to make sure that best cases of journalists are supported. So I'm mentioning this just to show that there is quite a lot of support for journalists if they're being sued. Now, in order for them to benefit from this support, it is absolutely crucial that journalists speak out when they face legal actions. Unfortunately, in the last years, we've had difficulties to convince journalists to speak publicly because there is, unfortunately, still a stigma attached to being sued. Some journalists we were in contact, they feel that just by having a lawsuit against them, their work is being questioned, and they didn't feel comfortable to speak up. While others are badly advised sometimes from lawyers not to speak up about their cases. We've managed to convince a lot of journalists, and now that they're speaking more and more, they also understand that this is a problem that is being faced by a lot of journalists. So it's very important to document and map cases. And the reason why these cases need to be public is because it's our only chance to show how big of a phenomenon this is becoming and why it needs to be tackled. And this is why we're using two platforms, Mapping Media Freedom, which is run by ECPMF, and Council of Europe Platform on Safety of Journalists, where we are a member, to register and document SLAPP cases. And I would like to invite journalists in Austria to please speak publicly about these cases and also get in touch with us in order to document these cases.
And this support is available for journalists all over Europe, just within the European Union, or on a broader area?
We have several. So the short answer is whoever is in Europe can benefit from legal support, can apply and have legal support. Within ECPMF, there are different programs. There is one program which is dedicated only to European Union member states and candidate countries. This is the MFR that I mentioned, but we have also National Endowment for Democracy, which also provides legal support. So the short answer is yes, everyone in Europe can apply and also benefit from legal support, be that from ECPMF or other organizations that I mentioned.
Okay, so this is good news for journalists in Austria as well. And
Absolutely.
As we're talking about the EU dimension, there is a directive to come, or what is going on the European Union? Because you are involved in the process, and I heard that very soon a directive should be published. Could you tell us?
Yes, this is an important question. Now, it all started when Daphne Caruana Galizia was assassinated in 2018. We as ECPMF, when there, we were very active, and we're still very active in Malta, monitoring all the cases around Daphne's case. As you know, there are criminal cases, ongoing criminal cases, as well as civil cases. Now, when she was assassinated, and as the information about her profile, her work was emerging, we understood that she had around 50 defamation lawsuits active. We knew that this is not normal. What we didn't know is how much this phenomenon was spread. So we started to discuss with each other, with Matthew, her son, with CPJ, Article 19, friends in different organizations. We were having sporadic discussions, and we said, okay, this is not normal, but we want to know whether other journalists are also facing the same. Quickly, we decided to organize an event in Brussels as ECPMF. We wanted to have an expert talk with 20 people. We set up the event, and more than 80 registered. And we had people from the European Parliament, European Commission, all there being super interested in the topic. And we said, okay, the fact that there is some interest is quite an indicator. And then we were very lucky to have Greenpeace International joining us, who helped the whole community, press freedom organizations coming together and joining forces. We organized another event, we started to work on groups, etc. Since then, several things happened. First, there is a coalition, a loose coalition of 100 organizations. We meet every second Tuesday, and we strategize what to do. And also on top of this, we created what is known now as the Case Coalition. And as part of that, first we have asked the European Commission to come up with a directive to stop SLAPPS. Secondly, we called the Council of Europe to draft and approve a self-standing recommendation against SLAPPS. And thirdly, we called on the European Parliament to react. The European Parliament already published an INI report. It's an own initiative report, which calls on the European Commission to react. The European Commission set up an expert group. I represent the ECPMF there together with lots of colleagues from different organizations, and we're advising the Commission on the legislation. The Council of Europe set up an expert group in January actually, and we know from the European Commission that very soon, in a matter of 2-3 months, the European Commission will come up with legislation, which means this legislation then will have to be implemented at national level, and hopefully it will, if not bring an end to SLAPPS, limit SLAPPS. What we're asking more practically in terms of legislation, we want procedural rules in place which will enable early dismissal of SLAPP. What it means practically, it means if a journalist is being sued, then he or she shouldn't have to wait for weeks, months, or years for that case to be resolved. But if a judge sees that this is clearly a SLAPP, then there should be procedures in place which can allow a judge to very quickly dismiss the case. We want also to have sort of deadlines until when a SLAPP can be brought, so that journalists are not don't live in anxiety, fearing that a SLAPP can be used against them any time. We want favorable rules on burden of proof in SLAPP case. We want rules which would impede plaintiffs from bringing multiple SLAPP lawsuits regarding the same matter. And there are also a lot of other measures, not to go very in details, but happy to share more information. The more non-legislative part, we would like also for the European Commission and then member states to provide victim supports, be that assistance with legal aid. Yes, there is quite a lot of legal aid available, but of course it's limited in terms of resources and also financial aspects. So that's why we hope that at national level there will be assistance organized. We also want support in terms of emotional and psychological harm. What we've seen with journalists is when they face SLAPPs, it's very difficult for them emotionally to cope with that, especially if these are freelance journalists who don't have a very big media outlet supporting them. So support in these cases is very important. And lastly, political and financial support to strengthen and fund civil society organizations. The reason why SLAPPS has become such a big topic in a matter of 2 years is because we all have come together and we've pushed very hard for institutions to react. That's why this support to civil society is very important.
Okay, so this directive coming up very soon is meant to avoid forum shopping, as we call it, cross-border cases. So do we have any countries in Europe that already have a national regulation against SLAPPS? I think
we have two types of initiatives. We have initiatives from some countries which genuinely want to tackle SLAPP, and we have some initiatives from countries like Malta, which they have made a big fuss, like they're introducing anti-SLAPP legislation, but if you analyze the legislation, it's not even close to what they need to present. So what I would say in this question is that there are initiatives here and there. We as coalition, what we're doing is we're monitoring these initiatives to make sure that at least the basic procedural rules will be introduced at national level, and that we make sure that this anti-SLAPP legislation does the work that it's supposed to do, meaning protect journalists. We don't have, there isn't any national law on anti-SLAPP in Europe so far. Initiatives here and there, and the European Commission directive, which will be introduced in a matter of a few months.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. So I would lose some words about our Austrian initiative, the Rechtsdienst Journalismus, to give the audience an idea of what we are doing here. And afterwards, we will have a question and answering round. So, well, as I already said before, this intimidation of free reporting through physical, mental, and of course, legal pressure in Austria went hand in hand with our notice of a lack of legal aid for journalists in Austria, especially freelance journalists. So we decided to give an answer to this problem. And within this Rechtsdienst, we offer as well financial support, as it is done by the ECPMF. But due to the fact that we don't work in whole Europe with very many different jurisdictions, we work on a national level. And that means that we could as well serve an impart of knowledge in addition. So we have a 3-step program here to give this journalists support. On the first step, as I already said, we offer workshops in media and copyright law to strengthen the competence of journalists and thus the confidence. Of course, even the best prepared reporting does not necessarily protect from being sued, but because, as we said, the goal of SLAPPS is not to win a cause, it is to silence reporting. But diligent work in respect of media and copyright rules helps minimizing the problems, we think. On a second step, we offer in-house service for individual legal information and advice. On one hand, pre-publication on a very basic level, and on the other hand, post-publication when it comes to legal pressure and problems for journalists. And for very complicated cases, we work together with a pool of associated attorneys. And then on a third level, on a third step, we plan to set up a fund that allows financial support for lawsuits in certain cases. The basic idea of this Rechtsdienst Journalismus is that no journalist in Austria should be left alone with legal problems arising out of media and copyright issues. So that's the basic idea of our service. And now I would say we are open for questions from the audience. If someone wants to.
May I answer? I answered partially to the question from Otmar. So yes, as you know, the new EU directive will only cover cross-border cases. That was not what we suggested. We wanted an anti-SLAPP directive that would cover everything. But you know how the EU works. In fact, we're very happy with this result because we know from other legislation concerning media and journalists that usually it takes a lot of years for the EU Commission to act. I think in this case, the reason why the EU responded to this call is very much connected to the case of Daphne Caruana Galizia Foundation. I know Commissioner Vera Jourova gave a personal promise to the family that she will tackle SLAPPS, and we're very happy to consider her as a friend, and she's delivering. So it is limited, but we see this as a starting point. And with regard to the first part, I answered already, there isn't any legislation in EU at national level countering SLAPPS.
I have a question, if I may. It's more on a general level, because do you think that the media in various European countries is reporting enough on the issue? Because my impression is that there wasn't a lot of reporting in Austria, which of course I follow the closest, and it's starting now, but I think there could be more public awareness.
So first, that's why I said in the beginning, I'm very happy to be part of this event, because I see this as an introduction of SLAPPS in Austria, and it's a very good starting point. In some countries, there is a difference. In some countries where SLAPPS are being used quite a lot, like in Malta, in Poland, Hungary, Croatia. Now, journalists, because they're facing SLAPPS, they are much more interested. They attend different conferences, they speak to conferences, and also at national level, they are organizing such events. In other countries, we see journalists being less active. But when they start facing with legal actions, and they get in touch with us, and we explain that a certain legal action is a SLAPP, they start understanding the concept and realize that, well, this is a problem also in our countries. So we see, compared to 3 years ago, when very few people knew about SLAPPS or recognized these lawsuits as a problem, there is now much more interest. And we can see that there are different small events organized in different countries, which help raise awareness. From our side as ECPMF, this is also today, but in other countries, we're very happy to participate, and we take these invitations very seriously, because it's a very good opportunity for us to speak at national level, just explain that this is a problem, there is help available, and also the problem is being tackled. So yeah.
I have another one. Very pragmatic question again. If somebody wants to explain to somebody, okay, tell me what the SLAPP is, what's the link I would give them?
Yes, so if you go to the case website and you scroll down, I think it's on the first page, I'll find it meantime, there is a checklist there. Now, to be very honest and sincere here, is It's not an easy exercise to identify a SLAPP. Of course, there have been questions: what if it's misused? What if a journalist has defamed someone and then he or she claims it's a SLAPP? Well, from my experience in the last 3 years, and we've documented a lot of cases, and those journalists who have defamed or who got the story wrong, they don't go public about that case. They try to keep that case as private as possible. So I don't know a single case where a journalist got a story very, very wrong, and then he or she tries to claim publicly that it's a SLAPP. I'm being the judicial system is being used against me, etc. So that risk doesn't really exist. And secondly, there is a checklist that we've put in place, and that is likely to change when there is legislation. But there is a checklist that can help people to understand whether a case is a SLAPP or not. The whole idea behind this is just to see to what extent the journalist has reported based on facts, and whether the lawsuit has either no grounds at all or it's a bit exaggerated. Of course, there are cases when journalists don't have the whole picture. Sometimes it's because of lack of transparency, because sometimes it's because people don't speak. And if a journalist had made a minor ethical mistake, and then you have people claiming €500,000 in damages, that also would fall within SLAPPS. And I would conclude here on this question just saying that I'll share the checklist, but we're very happy to help. Within the case, there is a group of us. If you get in touch, we're very happy to give a call to a journalist, go through the story together, and then identify elements of SLAPPS if there are such elements there.
I have another one. If nobody else is asking, I just want to.
I think there is feel free, but I think there is also Otmar one.
Sorry,
he has a question.
Okay.
But feel free.
I didn't see Otmar. Otmar, you have a question, so please feel free.
Well, a question to Flutura. I would like to know, are there cases where actually these millions of euros or these high damages have actually been paid by these media or by journalists or groups of journalists so far, or was it just a threat so far?
So first of all, I'm limited in terms of data in the last 3 years, because this is when we started to be more interested. As I said, there are two types of legal actions. One is these legal threats, and I would like to mention kind of a very nice practice from Malta. There is an online media called the Shift News, which was established after Daphne was assassinated. They are a very good media outlet. What they have done, so they have faced a lot of legal threats, usually coming from lawyers in London. So what they do is they send a letter. It's marked private, confidential, not for publication, because of course these law firms, they don't want the information to go public. And what the Shift News has done regularly, they publish immediately these letters, and they write an article and they say, we're not going to respond to you. If you want to sue us, go ahead. And as far as I know, none of the threats has been materialized. To the point, if I remember correctly, one of the editors told me that at some point these law firms stopped writing letters because they didn't want them to be published. They started to call them on the phone, and then they stopped responding. So this was one of the ways to deal with that. And with regard to lawsuits, we don't know a single lawsuit which was successful, and this is why we call them SLAPP. So the idea is that you sue a journalist, you force him to hire a lawyer because you need to prepare a response response in court, and you force them to go through all these procedures, and in the end, it doesn't matter for a billionaire whether he invests 100,000 euros in a certain case, and it doesn't matter whether he wins the case. The whole idea is to make a fuss, to create an impression that something was wrong with that case. So yes, I don't know a single case of SLAPP which was successful.
So I would have a question, Flutura. How about the role of the attorneys? Are there any specialists, and is there enough awareness among attorneys about this problem?
You reminded me of a link. Again, I will find it and I will share it. So the Case Coalition, what we're doing is on yearly basis, when during the time when the Eurovision Song Contest takes place, we're organizing a European anti-SLAPP prize. This contest, this is an event where we give prizes to the bully lawyer of the year, to the bully corporation of the year, and we identify those who enable SLAPPs. Now, it's not enough for a politician or a rich businessman to have this desire to go after journalists. You need a whole system which enables them to do that. And a very strong role is played by lawyers. And now we know in different countries, lawyers who use SLAPPs against journalists as a tactic, as a strategy. What we're doing is trying to name and shame all these lawyers who go after journalists. And we have already identified a lot of them in different countries. How this naming and shaming is done, it's in purpose, it's our strategy, is first through this European contest, anti-SLAPP contest that we organize every year. Secondly, when we document cases on mapping media freedom and Council of Europe platform, we always mention the name of the lawyer so that everybody knows who is going after journalists. And in some countries, we've seen that some lawyers have started not to take such cases because they're like, okay, we don't want to be named internationally, we don't want to associate ourselves with SLAPPs. So it has had an effect. One thing that I personally don't like, and I always advise against, is that sometimes when journalists are slapped with lawsuits and they hire a lawyer, some lawyers, maybe because they want to be careful, maybe they want to control the case, they advise journalists not to speak out about these cases, not to tell the public, not to document, etc. And that creates a problem because if we hide these cases, we can't show that it's a problem. So sometimes we have some disagreements, and then what happens is we organize a long meeting with journalists. We explain all the arguments in favor of speaking about these cases, and we're successful most of the time in convincing them. And then they speak to their lawyers and it's all okay. And I'm sharing this hoping that journalists who are present here, I hope you never face a SLAPP, but if yes, then the way forward is really to document these cases publicly.
That leads me to another question, because if you say someone makes a SLAPP, this, and as we said, it's not very easy and always clear to identify SLAPP. So this saying could as well be defamation. Did you ever hear about this kind of problem?
How do you mean? A lawsuit having grounds, or sorry, if you can explain the question.
Some attorney sues someone, and for example, you say this is a SLAPP. So this could as well be seen as defamation, because it's not always that clear if it is a SLAPP or not.
I understand the question. Yeah. It's a very valid question, and there is always this risk. But the fact that we are a very strong international coalition within the case means that it's quite impossible for lawyers to sue us, because that would mean they have to sue the entire coalition for defamation. when we issue statements of support for journalists, we've done that in Croatia, in Poland, all these countries that I mentioned. These statements are signed by a lot of organizations. So these lawyers who would pretend that naming a certain case is a SLAPP is defamatory per se, they'll have to sue ECPMF, IPI, CPJ, Article 19, everybody in these lists. That is impossible. And this is why we feel we are quite powerful in terms of the support we provide to journalists. And also we've seen that it makes a difference. Sometimes some journalists, when they are sued, they have the money to represent themselves. They have very strong support from their media organizations. And what they want is this international solidarity. And we've seen that it makes quite a big positive difference if a big number of organizations issue a statement of support for journalists. So that legal risk does exist in theory, but practically it's similar to these very big investigative projects from ICIJ, International Consortium on Investigative Journalism. Who do you sue there? The whole network? It's quite impossible. So yes, on one hand, you have powerful people going after journalists, but on the other hand, also us learning from that and joining forces and countering these threats.
Thank you. Carolina de Gruyter, please.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, very interesting. What strikes me is that you mentioned mostly cases and a whole flurry of cases, apparently, in Slovenia, Croatia. There's some in Austria, I understand. What else did you mention? Poland, Serbia, Malta. Is this predominantly, at least for the moment, a matter that affects Central Europe more than like the part that I live in? I'm in Brussels right now. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
It's a good question. So first, I didn't mention, I think the center of the SLAPPS is London and UK, and there just the fact of being sued, it can ruin financially a media outlet. There is a big problem there. The good thing about it is that there is a national coalition trying to push the authorities to come up with legislation. There was a debate, I think the first in Europe within the Parliament on SLAPPS, super interesting. And after this meeting, what we can do, perhaps maybe collect a list of links with different activities, share it with you, and when you have time, you can go through it. I mentioned only these cases, but in fact, there are much more. You have cases in Romania, quite a lot. You have cases in Brussels. We have supported recently EU Observer. We work closely with them. They were sued by people linked to a Lukashenko family for a story which involved some companies which were set up in Europe but have links with Lukashenko, and it was in the this was when there were sanctions, I think, political sanctions against Belarus. So they were sued. We consider that has elements of SLAPPS, and we supported them. They also faced legal threats before in terms of legal letters. What we did is we went public about it, and I think the claimants never filed a lawsuit because it became already a very big issue. And also there's a very good article written by Professor Dirk Verhoef on at least, I think, 3 cases of SLAPPS involving academics, a doctor, I think. So it is present also in Belgium. Now, you need to take into consideration that in terms of capacities, we're limited. We don't have, no organization has the capacity to map every single case within European Union. First, it's a matter of finance and resources, and secondly, is a matter of people speaking out publicly. But yes, it's a problem also in other countries. It's not limited to those that I mentioned.
Okay.
Any more questions? So yeah, if there are no more questions, from my side, everything is clear as far. So then I would close the meeting, say thank you to all of you for joining us and being interested in this very important topic and serious problem. Yes, because Flutura said she would send some links. So
sorry, that was me.
So we could then send out a list to all of you with the links Flutura said. We will send you emails, and maybe this would help you a little bit.
Very happy to share that. I wanted to say thank you very much to Presseclub Concordia for inviting me, and also to participants. And if there is one thing that I would ask to participants is just share with your colleagues some parts of the discussion we had today. That helps a lot. If all of you would speak to your colleagues about SLAPPS and the idea that we had this event, it helps a lot. And in case, I hope you will never need legal support, but in case you need support or know people who need support, please get in touch. We're very happy to help. And I look forward to our future collaboration with you, Daniela and Walter.
Thank you, Flutura, so much. And sorry for disturbing the talk with clicking on your link.
I know, sorry.
The European SLAPP contest. If you allow me, just one last question. I know it's not the
yes.
Well, if somebody here in the room happens to know an attorney or a lawyer who might be a good nominee for the SLAPP contest,
get in touch with us.
Get in touch with you. Okay, excellent.
Yeah,
so,
and make sure, especially for journalists, when there is a lawsuit against a journalist and that lawsuit is reported in media, make sure you mention the name of the lawyer. This is very important.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Flutura. Looking forward to
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Well. Thank you, Flutura, as well from my side. It was a great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. All the best.